Again, welcome today. Thank you for joining us today for our Brain Health and Wellness programming here at Brain Northwest. We have the privilege of having Caterina Turner teaching with us today. We have brought on a collection of new teachers, and she is one of them, and I'm so thankful to get this opportunity to learn along with both of you, with all of you. So she's going to be talking about communication after a TBI, and giving us some really wonderful practical tools. And I will let you further introduce yourself, Caterina. Thank you for being here. I will be monitoring the chat and supporting questions in the chat and at the end. So if there's any needs, let me know, and I'm here.
Thank you so much, Reggie, for that introduction. It's so nice to be here with all of you. As Reggie mentioned, I'm Caterina Turner. I'm a former TBI brain injury specialist and case manager, and I come with a lived experience also as a caregiver, a spouse of an individual with TBI. So I come dual-lensed here just to bring different strategies for you, and I hope that you find them helpful. My intent is to give you tools and guidance that provide immediate impact and value that you can use tonight at the dinner table. So I do hope that you do find this helpful and practical. And if you do find that, some of the verbiage or the pictures are too overstimulating, as Reggie mentioned earlier, please do feel free to turn off your camera. I am all for reducing cognitive load. You sit back, close your eyes. I'll be reviewing the slides in depth. So, you can certainly just kick back and relax and listen to this on your own without, that brain fatigue of staring at the screen. I do ask that you bear with me. I'm toggling now between two screens, so I will have my slide deck on one side and my notes on another. So if I'm looking this way, I'm not meaning to be rude. I'm just trying to navigate my computer situation happening at this moment. So please do give me that grace. Okay. So here is our roadmap together. First, we're going to look at word finding and why it can feel so hard after a brain injury and why that struggle is not your fault. So here we're going to review a few scripts that you can lean into when the conversations are feeling tough or you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Next, we're going to practice ways to express your needs with clarity and, of course, confidence. And then explore techniques for meaningful conversations that leave you feeling not exhausted. So maybe feeling a little bit energized or empowered after the conversation. Finally, we're going to equip loved ones with support strategies so they can help rather than fix. And I know it's really hard as a caregiver to not just want to jump in and save the day. So that'll help there. And then there will be time for questions at the end, like Reggie had mentioned. So if there is anything that surfaces for you during this training, please do feel free to jot them down or make a note. I'm sure Reggie would be happy to have an email sent her way with any concerns or comments or questions that you do have. So I want you to take a moment, and if you can, do a little bit of a self-reflection. Where do you fall within this spectrum? So maybe you bump into an occasional missing word, which lands in the mild column, or you're noticing word searching more days than not, which would then land in the moderate range. Or perhaps you're finding every day is an uphill battle and it just feels overwhelming. Then that is what we would certainly call significant. So you can feel free to throw it in the chat, or again, just have that self check-in and kind of keep that in the back of your mind throughout so you can really see where you're at on the spectrum and then what situations would work best for you. So I want you to imagine you're in a grocery store. You're looking for that creamy green fruit for dinner. You have tacos on the brain. You're struggling to find the fruit. You can picture it, smooth skin, large pit, but the word has completely disappeared. You turn to an employee and you begin and you say, it's green on the outside. It's got the large pit. You start to use the gestures. It looks like And then, the seconds feel like minutes. The fluorescent lights begin to buzz and they buzz louder and louder. You're starting to feel a little bit chilly from being in the frozen section. You're feeling overstimulated. Your heart beat is getting a little fast. And your confidence slips right along with the missing word, avocado. If that sounds familiar, then you're certainly in the right place. So, that heartbeat of silence is not failure. It's certainly your brain's GPS hitting reroute. So, after a brain injury, the fastest language roads may be closed. So, your brain kind of sends traffic through side avenues and tunnels. And clinicians have labeled this anomia, which is a form of aphasia. It's kind of under that blanket term. And, if you haven't been diagnosed with a formal expressive disorder, and if you're wanting proof that you're not alone, please note that a recent study found that nearly 60 people with moderate to severe TBI still hit word finding bumps, even after they were deemed fine or they didn't receive that diagnosis. So even though you don't have the diagnosis, know that your experience is valued and it's heard and you're seen, and there are strategies for you to help. So the next time that the word goes missing, remember the detour is the brain's way of keeping the traffic moving. And then today we're going to be handing you some different cones and some different strategies to kind of help you navigate that traffic. So in this image, you'll see a wide array of bridges. And I want you to picture conversations kind of like an island of meaning, and your words form the bridges and allow ideas to cross. So after a brain injury, some bridges need reinforcement or a fresh design. So on this slide, I'll walk you through 4 styles that you can choose from on the fly, each engineered for a different kind of traffic. So for the first bridge, express bridges, that's going to be your daily communication, which is a quick greeting at the checkout. That's going to be a neighbor saying hi when you're checking the mail. So it's going to be super fast, easy to deploy. So a line like, give me a second while I line up my words, buy you space without stalling in the moment. Scenic routes are the sturdy arches that support deeper dialogue. So you can think of this like planning a weekend or talking through feelings. You might begin with, I'd love to map out our vacation plans, or I'll take this step by step. So that way you're kind of scaffolding that framework. Or you can even offer simple check-ins through the scenic conversation, like, does this make sense? Am I making sense? Do you have any questions? Am I getting this point across? Like, is this making sense for you? And then emergency bridges are when the stakes are high. So you can think of this as being at a doctor's appointment. And I'm sure you've been in a similar situation where everything kind of goes out the window. You're trying to think, I know I came here for a reason. I had all of these things that I wanted to talk about, and then you try to talk about them or you try to explain them, and sometimes even, you can't get the words out. So it's always very helpful for you in that moment to, make the notes, have a loved one come with you to those appointments, and then really plan that conversation out in advance. And then finally, there are construction zones. So this is when noise, fatigue, or emotion threaten a shutdown. And in that moment, you want to lower the drawbridge by simply saying, hey, this environment is too much. I'm overstimulated. I might need a quick reset. Can we just take a moment, or can I have a quiet space to go to? So if you remember the avocado bridge or the avocado story we just referred to, that was definitely a breakdown in the bridge, and just having a simple script would have been helpful in that situation, kind of as a go-to to gather the thoughts, just to give you a space for pause. Okay, so this is going to be your Express Bridge toolkit. And again, these are going to be verbal speed lanes that you use every day. So this is going to be confirming a meeting time, answering the cashier, or greeting a neighbor. It's minimizing the cognitive strain because the word is already preloaded. So it's really leaving your brain to focus on the actual message. You can say things like, I need a moment to organize my thoughts. And that'll signal kind of like that brief pause so your memory can help to catch up. Or let's make sure that I'm explaining this clearly. And that'll give you a natural checkpoint that slows the pace and then invites feedback. Or one of my favorite things, and I have to say this all the time when my husband is cooking, is I communicate better when I'm not juggling two things. So whether I'm washing the dishes or I'm cooking or I'm cleaning, that's always the time he wants to have a conversation. So for me, I have to say, hey, this is not the time to have this conversation. I need to focus and we can take a step back and have it in a little bit. Or another go-to is, could you repeat the main point for me? So when people give a lot of information all at once, sometimes it's really hard to process what's being taken in. So just saying, hey, I really didn't understand. Can you pause and let me gather my thoughts? So I want you to remember that quality communication takes time, especially when neural pathways are rerouting. So back in that produce aisle, that extra beat that you took to retrieve the avocado may have felt awkward, but it was just the brain doing its repair work. So just give yourself grace and space to ask for a moment. So meaningful conversations definitely take a lot of time and a lot of cognitive load, and for some people, a lot of planning. So this is something that you may want to think about in advance. You may want to jot down your ideas, maybe different notes, help chunk the information. So for instance, planning a medical decision or talking through relationship concerns, mapping out finances, definitely place kind of like a heavy cargo on the language bridge. So instead of racing across, if we just kind of build this multi-span bridge with clear signposts so neither speaker or listener loses the thread, that would just be the optimal route for a meaningful conversation. So I invite you to visualize your bridge. What does that look like for you? It's a graceful arch bridge. It has sturdy pillars, which are your main points. Your expansion points are your intentional pauses. And a well-lit roadway offers clear cues that keep both parties aligned. So begin by setting the destination. I want to discuss something important about our next stop in rehab. That single line primes everyone's cognitive GPS and summons the right emotional resources. Next, outline the spans. There are three parts: goals, timing, and support. I'll take them one by one. So like I mentioned, chunking helps protect the working memory rather than doing a whole bunch of different data dumps. It really helps your brain process. So if you're really thinking, okay, I need to plan for this vacation, but I want to talk about where we want to go and the time that we want to go, and then who's going to be coming. So really just trying to focus and chunk that information to have that complete, meaningful conversation. So as you move across each span, install the expansion joints. Ask, let me pause, does this make sense so far? And then that kind of gives your brain the language to catch its breath, recalibrate if fatigue sets in, which it likely will, because I don't know if you're like me, but long conversations sure do take it out of me. And just having that space to pause and reassess or say, do we need to come back to this conversation, is always very helpful. So communication emergencies extend beyond finding words. They're definitely going to involve the entire neurological and psychological system being overwhelmed. So these different protocols that are in place, or even these scripts, really provide immediate relief while addressing the root cause of communication breakdown. So you'll know the warning signs, like earlier in the grocery store. What does that look like for you? The fluorescent hum grows louder, the peripheral chatter sharpens, your pulse begins to quicken, and the neural traffic backs up. So rather than forcing words through that bottleneck and trying to get out all of these words, you're trying to say that avocado shoe, the word shoe is coming out. That's not the right word. You're trying to adjust, and things just aren't happening. So rather than going through that bottleneck, pull the emergency brake with a calibrated phrase that buys your brain that chance to reset and to recalibrate and reconnect. So here are my 5 circuit breakers woven into one fluid response. I'm feeling overwhelmed and need a moment to reset. My communication battery is low. The environment is too much right now, and I need to feel safe so we can keep talking. Now, I know that that is a lot to say in one sentence, and it's probably not realistic, but you get the gist. You can cut it and you can use the first clause. So you could say something like, this is feeling like a little much. I need a reset. And then you let silence handle the rest. But that one sentence is kind of fourfold. So in one breath, it names the overload, it stakes a claim for time, it identifies the trigger, and then it sets a safe boundary for your time and for your rest space. So again, think back to the produce aisle scramble for the avocado. Even just stepping away to a quiet corner would have been beneficial in that moment if feeling overwhelmed. And then come back to the conversation or um, even, ask a loved one to assist you. So bridges last when we keep the seams together and tensions are high. You're frustrated. Your caregiver, your partner is feeling frustrated. You may start to notice there are some tiny cracks, when words slip or patience wears thin. So here's some different maintenance routines that I recommend. Own the wobble. And I feel like I didn't say that well. Let me try that again. So that's a really great go-to if, you feel like you were trying to get your point across, but it didn't quite land. Just own it. I feel like that didn't come out very well. Let's try this again. Second, reassure the traveler on the other side. I communicate differently now, but my caring and my commitment are still solid. I'm still committed to this conversation or, whatever it is that we're trying to address at this moment. But, we're going to have to navigate a different routine of how to communicate. And then reinforce patience and timing. So even something as simple as saying, thank you for waiting while I find the right words, is just it's just an excellent go-to. And again, it gives that grace and the space and um, gives you time to reflect on, the conversation, what you're trying to get across. And then finally, you can set a safety rail. So this is also helpful with caregivers. So I'd really like my space before you jump in. And of course, it's being respectful, but giving you that sense of agency of, hey, I can answer this on my own. So sometimes even the best express bridge stalls mid-crossing. So here's some different toolkits rooted in speech language pathology techniques, framed so you can remember in each produce aisle. So you want to start broad and then zoom in. So for instance, when you're describing the word that you're trying to recall, we're going to hold on to this avocado story the whole way through, guys. So you hang on. So I'm sorry if I keep referencing this avocado, but it's going to see us through. So we're going to start broad and zoom in, and we're going to say, it's a fruit, it's soft, it's ripe. We mash it, we use it for guacamole. I guarantee you, as soon as you say guacamole, that clerk is going to go, I know exactly what you're talking about. So just naming the category lights up the semantic networks, and it often shakes the target word loose. So um, trying to categorize it is a good go-to. And then describe the features, describe the color, the shape, the size, or the use. So the sensory detail recruits neighboring neural circuits. So you can, for instance, say something along the lines of, it's dark, green skin, big pit, buttery texture. And then you can say the first letter or even mouth the first letter as you feel it hovering. When it feels like it's on the tip of your tongue, you would say, ah, just try to get across the word. So using that phonemic cues would nudge the motor speech pathway. And then you can compare it to something similar. So you could say kind of like a pear, but green for tacos. And of course, analogies tap associative memory corridors. So the go-to now with, having a phone in our back pocket is just being able to pull it up. You know what you're trying to do. Green, round fruit, green, what does it look like? And I'm sure it would be able to pop it up. Or you could gesture. So using these in layers, category first, then feature if still stuck, then the first letter, then the analogy, and then the gesture. Each step adds a lane to the bridge until the traffic flows again. So please do try this. I find that gesturing or even using a notebook to write it down or draw it, if that's helpful for you. It depends on, of course, how your brain works. Everyone's brain is different. But gesturing or drawing is definitely a go-to for some individuals. So here we have a best practices for conversations with partners. And when you're on the listening side of the conversation bridge, there are three pillars that keep the span steady: patient waiting, active listening, and then providing support when requested or on an agreed upon cue. So, for instance, if your spouse says, "Hey, when I look at you like this, that means help me, but otherwise, please don't jump in." So, picture yourself standing next to your loved one at the grocery store. They're searching for the avocado. Your job is not to yank the word into place. Your job is to hold space, practice waiting. You can count to 5 before jumping in. Keep gentle eye contact that says that I'm here, no rush. And unless they explicitly ask, please do resist finishing their sentences. Completing the puzzle for them robs them of their agency, but also robs the brain work that's, very helpful for them to kind of develop these skills and work on navigating word finding on their own. Again, like I mentioned, watch for nonverbal cues like a raised eyebrow, a hand gesture, "Hey, can you please help me out?" Um, and then reflect back, you know, what you hear with a phrase. So what you're saying is, and this confirms understanding and gives the speaker a chance to correct course without derailing their flow. And provide requested support. So no more, no less. And instead of, guessing the missing words, you can ask, would you like help with that? If the answer is yes, you can offer two different options rather than flat corrections. So rather than saying avocado, you can say, are you thinking of an avocado or a kiwi? And that keeps the agency with the speaker, whether their words land or not. And then it's also very important that you acknowledge their effort. Validation lowers stress and it frees cognitive bandwidth. And it also, gives them empowerment. It gives them that confidence that they need to continue with word finding on their own. So even the sturdiest bridge fails if we ignore hidden potholes. The three most common areas are rushing, multitasking, and fix-it listening. Rushing happens when we stack questions before the first answer even lands, overloading working memory and creating traffic jams of half-finished thoughts. Multitasking, scrolling on a phone, tidying a room, or my example earlier, making dinner, is definitely a chance to derail word retrieval. So do just try to mitigate staying busy or keeping busy when an individual is trying to have a conversation, because they do need that space to know that you're actively listening. And again, it's very overstimulating for them to try to complete their sentence or even gather their thoughts if there's a bunch of things going on or if they feel like perhaps you may not be actively listening or paying attention. And then fix it listening is jumping in just to supply the words or solutions, which we all would like to do. I know I am guilty of this regularly. I hear him and he's like, oh, what is that? And he starts thinking, and I'm just like, oh, I know what it is. I know it, but you don't want to take that. So just try not to fix. And again, wait on those cues of, I know, can you give me the word? And then, jump in. And lastly, this is something that's often very overlooked. But I can't do an overstimulating environment. We do not do big lights in my house. We do soft lamps, we do low TVs, and if there are too many things going on at once, for instance, my dog is barking, the TV is too loud, someone's ringing my doorbell, I hear all the cars going by, I feel it in my body, I feel it in my nervous system. That is, I am not in the right space for a conversation. So really just thinking about your environment and how you're setting up a space to have those conversations, either with your kiddos, with your partner, whether you're on the phone, if you work from home, whatever that looks like for you, just giving yourself that environment. So what that looks like is, turning down the TV noise, using soft lighting, facing the person that you're talking to. And this is kind of a no-brainer, but with phones, I know someone always has a phone in their hand or they're scrolling. Yeah, yeah, I heard you. Yeah. But just minimizing the distractions when you are making those connections. And even if it's a small conversation, just trying to show up and be present for that individual is very important. Something as simple as decluttering the room, making the countertops free of, clutter, and then placing routine items in the same location to reduce memory strain is always very helpful. Like for me, I always lose my phone or my keys. I wouldn't know if they didn't have a place to live, which is in a bowl on my counter. And everything has a place to live. Otherwise, it's a hot mess in my house. So here are some tools and resources to support the whole person. I do believe Reggie said that she'll be disseminating these slides to you after this class. So if you do hover over, there's some different links that would be helpful, different cue cards, cultural adaptation for caregivers, and this is really honoring the individual's culture and perspective and how to navigate that if you are a caregiver. Of course, emotional regulation, different digital supports. I love digital supports. This website has different amazing apps that you can navigate for literally anything that you're trying to think of, whether that's, word finding or I don't know, compensatory strategies. That's a go-to place. So some different things on environmental and energy management, which is huge. I know that previously Brain Northwest did some training on energy management, and that's so very important. So do check those out. And then, of course, I like to caveat, I am not a speech language pathologist. And if you're feeling like this conversation is definitely landing for you and you have not been in connection with an SLP, please do feel free to have this conversation with your caregiver or your PCP. They can work on a wide range of different strategies. So they can really help move the dial. But, if everyday conversations still feel like it's an obstacle, it's definitely time to bring in a specialist. They introduce evidence-based exercises, helpful technologies, and caregiver coaching. So progress continues, in between sessions. And then core takeaways. So the takeaway is your brain is not idling. You are not broken. It may feel like, you're in significant cognitive decline and there is no coming back. But it's just busy engineering, and every single time you reach for a word, you're helping to build those muscles and that strength back into your brain. So those brief pauses feel awkward in the moment, but they're just productive work zones where neurons are laying fresh tracks. The scripts and strategies and support tools we've covered today act like a safety harness to reduce anxiety and also free up processing power so new connections can form without overload. Every conversation is like a mini workout, and sometimes we're not really in a position to have a lot of conversations, whether that's isolation or, you don't really get out much, or, you don't really talk on the phone, or maybe you don't have that many doctor visits. So really thinking of different opportunities of where you can practice having conversations and connecting with individuals in your community is so very important to put these skills to use and to keep those muscles strong. So, small, consistent steps, daily practice, intentional pauses, and patient partners add up over time. Now, I leave the floor to you. I understand that was a lot of information and a lot of talking all at once. So, if you do have any questions or if you have any comments or thoughts, feel free to come off or you can throw them in the chat. Or if you feel more comfortable sending these questions to Reggie to be addressed, then you may feel free to do so.
I'm just going to pause recording and then we'll proceed with questions.
Okay.